Hello and welcome to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Hyde and I like to pretend I know stuff about cryptids. But today, I'm not really feeling the cryptid zine vibe, so I thought we could start a project that I've been thinking about for a couple of days and I'm kind of eager to get into. So, if you've seen the title of this video, you know what we're gonna do, but let's get some backstory. I have been playing Minecraft for about a month now, after a hiatus for about 10 years. So one of my friends sent me a TikTok of an AI generated realistic Minecraft movie still shot. And so here are the images that stood out to me. There are more, but these are the ones that stood out to me. And the one that really upset me, I don't know why it upset me so much, but it definitely, there's a place in my heart for Enderman, and the Enderman just wasn't it. So I thought today we can make our own version of an Enderman and make them realistic. And then after we do our character design, which this is my concept art sketchbook, once we do our character design, we will take it into Clip Studio Paint and we will render it to a level that I can, like the highest level of rendering I can get. I am not good at realistic art in any way, shape, or form. I am not good at rendering very well. Textures are not my friend, but we're gonna try to do this as best we can so that my tall friend Enderman can have their best life in the realistic realm. So if that interests you and you want to design your own Enderman, get your sketchbook out and draw along with me. Let's go. Today I have a special pencil that we're going to use. It is my 2mm drafting pencil that I got for my birthday. These ones are June gold, and you know what? No complaints. I got it as a birthday present. I think this is one of my favorite drafting pens that I've had. So, little pencil review. There you go if you need it. So I've done a couple of concept sketches, kind of like to understand what I want for this character design. I was thinking skeletal because he's tall and skinny, but then I didn't want it to be super rigid because he wasn't super rigid. So then I got some more concept art here where I wanted his head to be round and not humanoid. I'm not sure why. But the thing that I wanted with his jaw is to have it kind of seamlessly connect to the top. And then when he screams, it kind of pulls, kind of like Venom. Do you remember like Venom? Where if like he'd open his mouth, it would just stretch and like snap and like, you know. And then for the colored concept, this is almost where I want it to be, but not exactly. I want him to be more wispy and ethereal. And then I wanted it to have a glow from within because his eyes glow. And there's little texture here. I'll put up a little video or a little image here of what, you know, the original is. There's subtle texture, which I always thought was glow coming from within, but you know, I could be wrong. So I went from this and I was like, maybe I can make it a little scarier, maybe make it a little bit more realistic. So then I went to this and, you know, I understand, yeah, if he's screaming at you and it looks like that, it's gonna be terrifying. I think this is a little too, like, scary for what I want. Now, I drew this and then I went on Pinterest and looked up, like, you know, realistic Enderman art. And I have found that most people do interpret him as a skeleton with a glow from within. But I want to do it in a different way. I don't want to be like everybody else. But then also, I really don't want it to be like the AI image where it's just like a tall, skinny person in a dress. So we're gonna have to like ride that line. I do want them to have, you know, a skeletal figure, not like a skeleton, but a skeletal figure. And then I want it to be wispy, kind of, because I always think of them as ethereal, and because they're in a void, they're not really, and they teleport, they're not really like solid matter. And then they always give off glowy orbs. So I don't know where I'm gonna go with this, but let's get into this. We'll try and do a couple sketches. I was gonna finish up this sketch to like have a different friend behind him, but we'll just move on to this page and hope for the best. First, let's do a couple like shape sketches to see what kind of shapes we want for the body. Okay, so they two-hand the blocks, but I want them to have big spindly hands for some reason. I think it's because their arms are so long. Their arms are kind of, okay. So they have a big head that's bigger than their body. And then they have like a chunky sternum, which they don't really slouch, but they kind of should, I feel like. The problem with the block thing, like the Minecraft texture, is that nothing has hands and legs, or hands and feet, so you gotta like interpret that as you will. So, and then they have like really long arms that reach down almost to their like ankle, looks like, because like they look like this. Yeah, their arms are so long. Alright, so then now somehow we have to like translate whatever this is to something that's organic looking, right? Like this, but then we have to translate this into something that's realistic looking. So let's try again with another figure. Let's do more upright. Let's just start with the shape of the body. He's slim and tall, and he's slimmer than a human. I don't want them to be like humanoid, kind of, because like they teleport, you know? It's very humanoid. Okay, let's just keep throwing down sketches. Like, okay, so we have the option for a skeletal body, but then everybody else is doing that, which is, you know, I mean, it is a good interpretation because it is spindly. So I saw on Reddit too that someone thought that they were the players who went to the end and never got back. So then they turned into these void-like creatures. But it would be cool to like, what if they had like a texture on them? Like instead of just skeleton, on top of the depth that'll be here, right? Because the bones are going to be popping forward and the skin is going to be going backwards, like concaving. We'll have like a texture. I don't know how I'm going to pull this off, but what about like Souls of the Damned kind of like, or a texture kind of like vines or water that kind of come around and like mesh. We have that. I feel like we're just gonna have to stick with the skeletal. I do like this silhouette though. I like that it's kind of anatomically correct in the pelvis area. Yeah, I like the skeleton being there. If this is technically a human that was morphed into a monster by the void, right? You're gonna have human bone structure, right? Their head shape is probably gonna change, right? Their body is elongating, And when they scream, their whole mouth opens. Like there's space between the mouth because their body is falling apart basically. They're being held together by energy. What if they lost their jaw? Or you don't see it because their face is, like their body is now all like void. And their eyes are glowing. They still have eyes because they have pupils. They barely have flesh. Maybe their flesh is still attached, right? Anyways, sure. And then they'll just have like stretched skin, right? And then they won't have a mouth until they're screaming. In which case, we'll do this again. It's like his jaw is falling off almost. Do I want to bring it down lower? Not really. That kind of looks cool, yeah? Is Minecraft a horror game? I just didn't know about it? Like, what the hell, man? This is like one of my favorite mobs in friggin' Minecraft. They're my buddies. I literally have two just chilling in, look, I have two just chilling in my house. They're friends. I've made backstories for them. But I'm gonna say, designing these buds, they're a little scary. I think I like this situation. Like, these are cool. You can't see any features until it starts screaming at you, and then you know you're dead, because then it's gonna start running at you and punching you a bunch and, you know, having a fit. Just because you looked at them wrong. Okay. So now that we have kind of a design, right? So we're going with this guy, this body shape here. Possibly just all of that. We're gonna have the texture here. So this is this one. And then we're gonna have this head shape with that variant. So those. I can't imagine, like, the fact that this is a neutral mob, you know? Like, they don't do anything to you unless you do stuff to them first, right? Or look at them. But, like, could you imagine, like, just living in a world where these things exist, right? Not only do they exist, they walk around literally everywhere. They can break into your house. They take your stuff, right? But then also, at the same time, it's not a problem. You're just like, oh, look, there's my tall friend again. That silly guy, he's always taking my moss blocks. Like, could you imagine? Terrifying. There we go. I like that a little bit. So my thought for this is that the skin's gonna be stretched over it, so there's gonna be still texture. I don't think he's gonna have a belly button. Okay, let's go with some thumbnails of how we're gonna draw this guy. Like, what his environment will be. I don't even know what canvas, like, orientation I'm gonna do, but we'll just say probably a portrait. Or would landscape be better? Because, no, portrait, because I want to show how tall he is. Okay, glad we decided that ahead of time, because I would have messed up. Let's do some tree trunks and, like, maybe, like, make them, like, gnarled and stuff. Like, I don't want it to be horror, though. See, that's the thing. I want to show that these guys just exist in whatever environment that they can. I don't want it to be like, oh, it's only in a horror environment. I'm leaning towards the redwood trees, but I don't think that's gonna look very good. I kind of like this one if we can force perspective too. We'll have to see. All right, well, I think I have a design and maybe a setup that will work for this. I'm going to actually now stop doing this. I'm going to switch over to my digital format, but yeah, I'll see you in a little bit. So starting off, I scanned in my sketch and pulled it into Clip Studio Paint to just get a really nicely rendered sketch of the design, the silhouette that I wanted. Now, I am kind of disappointed in myself that I didn't add more poses to this sketch. I kind of was getting overwhelmed by all the ribs. As you can see, I redo them a bunch here. So I just kind of, I got too overwhelmed. And so I gave up on posing the ribs. I even gave up on doing the other side because it was just so much. I don't know why my brain can't function when there are ribs involved, but I think it's just the slimness of them. Anyways, I went through and I tried to figure out my silhouette here. As you can see, I redo the arms a bunch where I extend them, and then I actually ended up shrinking the hands a little bit and extending the arms a little more because the hands started seeming a little too long and then the arms didn't seem long enough. And I actually, a little bit later, I think I end up doing more stretching of the arms and more shrinking of the hands. So the blue here is just a guide for where I think the skin would stretch, because I wanted to have skin stretching across the skeleton so that it's a little more realistic. Here I'm trying to cheat. I am trying to do a background without actually doing a background. And I found for this, actually, the background was the hardest part for me. So I think in the future, maybe some future videos, I'm going to try making backgrounds so I can get more practice. This wasn't it. And you'll see in the final result, I did not do very well at the background. Now, to be honest, this whole process on the digital part of it took me about 4 hours, which is not really good for the result, in my opinion. But you can see I kind of tried to get some reference photos in here. Really, Google Street View is like gonna be one of your best references. It is kind of hard finding a place that you want to draw, but I live near redwoods, so I just kind of looked up my local redwood grove. And then I realized I did not want to draw redwoods because there were just too much going on. So finally, I gave up on my thumbnails, as you can see, and I started to just rough in a bunch of trees. Now, I did use a reference image a lot on this. Actually, I would say it's very heavily referenced and kind of too much. I referenced it too much, and I kind of got myself confused because I was going for some other thing and then this was doing something else. So I definitely used a bunch of the special texture brushes, like grass brushes, leaf brushes, just to try and fill in on my inadequacies that I have when it comes to backgrounds. I think, honestly, when it comes to backgrounds, it's not that I'm terrible at them, it's that I'm too lazy to do them right. And so I think that's what we're watching right here. About halfway through, I realized that I was mixing a bunch of my warm colors with my cool colors, so the trees weren't really making sense. Once I figured that out, though, it started to be more cohesive. I put a bunch of rocks in just because I thought maybe, or like a little group of rocks in, just because I thought it would like break up the monotonous green. And then I noticed that one of my rocks was getting really square, so I made it into a cube. as a little homage to Minecraft. So this was one of the things that I focused on a lot because I am not very good at rendering rocks, but I want to get better, so I decided that this was a nice little practice spot. Looking back, I probably shouldn't have used this as a spot to like render rocks as much as I can because everything else was so under rendered, but you know, what are you gonna do? So a little bit into the painting, I decided to try roughing in some textures in the background, and I noticed that my background and foregrounds were a little bit too flat, so I added more, and then I undid it, and then I redid it, and then I changed stuff, and it was a mess. I really need to learn how to do backgrounds again. This was just me throwing in a bunch of stuff and, you know, hoping for the best. Eventually, I did just end up using the leaf brush, which is one of my favorite brushes in Clip Studio, but it's definitely not a replacement for actual organic shapes. But yeah, that's what's going on here. I noticed that I was having trouble with the lighting and the color saturation. Something was going on where I couldn't quite get the right saturation. Looking back, it was probably okay, but at the time it was not looking correct to me. And so I just kind of refused to add too much light source or anything. I just kind of phoned it in there. I gotta say though, that dark blue leaf in the background for the way far distance was kind of the move because I really like that back. It's gonna be covered up by Enderman too, so whatever. Now, one of the things that I also regret is that I didn't put Enderman in this illustration until the way end. I didn't even start rendering him until the way end. And so because of that, he really stands out, and not in a good way. I was hoping for him to stand out because I do want that this is not correct kind of, you know, the uncanny valley kind of vibe that they give off when you just kind of stumble upon one in your game. I wanted that, but this didn't work out because the lighting was off and it didn't really mesh well. By this time, it was 3 hours into my background struggle, and I was done rendering. I was too exhausted to actually reposition him into an actual pose. I was too tired to resketch. I was just done. So honestly, he's just T-posing, basically. It's he's really just standing there, which is fine, I guess, but it's definitely not as dynamic as it should have been. I do have plans to redraw this because this was, although it was exhausting, it was very fun and super challenging. Although I gotta say that front-facing foot, good job to me. I just started rendering him as much as I could in my exhausted state. I think I did pretty well on the skin, and I liked to leave him a little fuzzy around the edges, just so it looks a little more ethereal, a little less structured. And then here's where I come to the texture. I wanted to hand draw the texture so it's curving up and around all the bones, but again, I was exhausted and I didn't want to do that. So what I did was I took a dragon scale brush and the liquefy tool, and I just kind of pushed the texture into the concave areas, and I left the texture on top of the skeleton area. And it turned out okay, actually. It kind of started looking a little electrified, which was pretty cool to me. So yeah, I kind of enjoyed that. That was a happy accident / lazy person hack. And then when it came to the glow, I couldn't really figure out what I wanted for like a realistic glow, but I just kind of played around with every single brush I could until I found something that I liked. And then finally, I added a little texture and a little overlay to kind of mesh everything together. Then I just kind of added some extra lighting to the background because I didn't want it to look wrong. And then finally I just signed it, and there we are. This is the final piece. Definitely not my strongest, but I think my redesign of Enderman turned out pretty good. I think I want to redo this in the future and maybe draw him bigger and in a pose. I think we got there in the end. So let me know in the comments below, did you like this? Would you like to redesign Enderman or any of the other Minecraft mobs? I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!